Dean never believed in fate. He believed in overdue bills. In splinters under his fingernails. In coffee that tasted like regret. And in the simple fact that raising a 6-year-old boy alone was hard enough without the universe deciding to play games. But on one ordinary Tuesday afternoon, 3 little girls walked into his life. And destroyed everything he thought he knew. The air smelled like wet dirt and highway exhaust. Dean sat on a cracked Green Park bench, nursing a lukewarm coffee while keeping one eye on his son. 6-year-old Toby was in the sandbox. Trying to feed a rock to a plastic dump truck. Again. "Don't eat the sand, buddy," Dean called. The rock immediately disappeared from Toby's mouth. A small victory. Dean leaned back and rolled up his sleeves. The autumn breeze hit his skin. And exposed the tattoo. A broken compass. Crude. Uneven. Scarred with age. A drunken mistake from 9 years ago. A reminder of a woman he hadn't thought about in almost a decade. Or at least. That's what he told himself. His fingers absent-mindedly traced the faded ink. Then he noticed them. 3 girls. Walking toward him. Perfectly synchronized. Identical. Triplets. About 7 years old. Matching charcoal coats. Matching dark bobs. Matching gray eyes. They looked completely out of place. Like someone had dropped them into the wrong world. Dean glanced around. No parents. No supervision. Just a distracted nanny staring at her phone near the swings. The girls stopped in front of him. 10 feet away. Silent. Watching. The middle girl stepped forward. "Hello, sir." Her voice was calm. Too calm. Dean frowned. "You girls lost?" The girl shook her head. "Our mother is working." The girl beside her pointed at Dean's forearm. At the tattoo. Then she said 5 words. 5 words that made Dean's blood turn to ice. "Our mother has that too." Everything stopped. The sounds of the park disappeared. The traffic vanished. The world narrowed to a single sentence. "Our mother has that too." Dean stared at the girl. His heart hammering. "What did you say?" "The compass," she replied. "She has the same one." The girl pointed again. "The top part is broken." Dean felt physically sick. Because this wasn't some generic tattoo. It wasn't flash art. It wasn't common. 9 years ago he'd drawn that compass himself on a napkin in a dive bar in Seattle. Only 2 people in the world had it. Him. And her. The woman from that weekend. The woman who vanished. The woman he'd never seen again. Dean swallowed hard. "What is your mother's name?" Before they could answer, a panicked voice exploded across the park. "Ruby. Hazel. Piper." A nanny came sprinting toward them. Terrified. She grabbed the girls immediately. "I'm so sorry," she gasped. "They aren't supposed to wander." Dean stood. "Wait." The nanny froze. "We have to go." As she hurried the girls away, Dean heard something. A name. One single name. A name that hit him like a freight train. Hastings. Dean stopped breathing. Because he knew that name. Everyone knew that name. The girls climbed into a black SUV. The door closed. And they disappeared. Just like that. Gone. But Dean couldn't shake the feeling. Because deep inside, he already knew. Something impossible had just happened. That night he couldn't sleep. Not even close. His tiny apartment felt smaller than ever. The walls pressed inward. The old refrigerator hummed. The dry cleaner downstairs rattled the floor. And Dean sat at his kitchen table staring at a laptop screen. Searching. Digging. Obsessing. Finally. He found her. A business magazine profile appeared. The headline read, "How Sloan Hastings Built a Billion-Dollar Empire." Dean clicked. And froze. There she was. Older. Sharper. Colder. But unmistakably her. The woman he'd known as Sarah. The woman who'd disappeared after one unforgettable weekend. Except now. She wasn't Sarah. She was Sloan Hastings. CEO. Billionaire. One of the most powerful women in America. Dean stared at the screen, trying to process what he was seeing. 9 years ago she'd been sleeping in cheap motels. Drinking cheap whiskey. Laughing at bad jokes. Now she was on magazine covers. Flying private jets. Running an empire. His stomach tightened. Then he found something else. A charity event photograph. A candid shot. Her back partially exposed. And there it was. The tattoo. The broken compass. Exactly where he remembered. Exactly the same. Dean closed the laptop. Hard. Because suddenly, the math became impossible to ignore. The triplets. Their age. The timeline. The tattoo. The coincidence. It all pointed to one terrifying possibility. Those girls might be his daughters. The next morning Dean made a decision. He had to know. No matter what happened. He had to know. So he went to Hastings Logistics. The building looked less like an office and more like a fortress. Glass. Steel. Power. Everything about it screamed one message. People like you don't belong here. Dean felt it immediately. His work boots. His worn jacket. His rough hands. He looked like a carpenter. Because he was one. Everyone else looked expensive. Polished. Untouchable. Still. He walked inside. Straight to reception. "I need to see Sloan Hastings." The receptionist barely looked up. "Do you have an appointment?" "No." "Then that's impossible." Dean considered leaving. Instead he grabbed a pen. Wrote 4 words. Folded the paper. And slid it across the desk. The note said, "I have the compass." 30 seconds later. The receptionist's phone rang. Her face changed instantly. Shock. Confusion. Fear. Then she looked directly at Dean. Floor 72. The office overlooked the entire city. Clouds drifted below the windows. Everything smelled expensive. Everything felt cold. And there she was. Sloan Hastings. Standing beside the glass. Waiting. For a moment neither spoke. 9 years vanished. Then she turned around. And whispered. "You." Not with happiness. Not with relief. With dread. Dean nodded. "Me." The first thing she asked wasn't how he'd been. It wasn't whether he was okay. It wasn't even hello. It was, "How much do you want?" Dean felt the sting immediately. Money. That's what she thought this was. A shakedown. A payday. A threat. But he hadn't come for money. He'd come for answers. "The girls," he said. "The ones in the park." Her expression changed. "Barely. But enough." "Are they mine?" Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Endless. Then finally, she answered. Yes. The word shattered everything. Dean sat down. Because suddenly standing felt impossible. 3 daughters. 3 little girls. 3 years of birthdays. Christmases. First words. First days of school. Gone. Missed. Lost. Because he never knew they existed. His voice cracked. Why didn't you tell me? Sloan laughed bitterly. We didn't know each other's last names. We used burner phones. We were strangers. Then her expression hardened. And I handled it. Dean stared. You handled it? She nodded. I built a company. I built a future. I gave them everything. But Dean shook his head. No. You gave them things. The room went silent. And for the first time, the billionaire had no answer. What happened next shocked him even more. Because 3 days later, she showed up at his garage. Alone. No lawyers. No assistants. No bodyguards. Just Sloan. And a manila envelope. She dropped it on his workbench. A solution. Dean opened it. His eyes widened. Inside was a legal agreement. And a cashier's check. $2 million. His stomach dropped. 2 million. Enough to erase every debt. Enough to buy a home. Enough to change Toby's life forever. All he had to do was disappear. Never contact the girls. Never claim paternity. Never become part of their lives. Dean looked at the check. Then looked at Sloan. The temptation was real. Painfully real. Because he wasn't rich. He wasn't powerful. He worried about grocery bills. He worried about rent. He worried every single day. But then he thought about the triplets. Ruby. Hazel. Piper. 3 little girls who didn't even know who he was. Dean pushed the envelope back. Take it. Sloan stared. Stunned. What? I said take it. She couldn't believe it. Most people would have grabbed the money instantly. Dean didn't. Because some things aren't for sale. I don't want your money. What do you want? Dean answered without hesitation. 1 hour. Bring them. Let them know I exist. For the first time. Sloan looked defeated. Not angry. Not powerful. Just tired. Very tired. And she left without another word. Sunday arrived. The botanical conservatory was quiet. Warm. Peaceful. Dean waited. Nervous. Terrified. Beside him sat Toby. Eating a granola bar. Completely unbothered. So I have sisters now? Dean laughed. Looks that way. Cool. That was apparently enough information for Toby. Then they arrived. Sloan. Ruby. Hazel. Piper. Walking toward them. Dean's pulse pounded. The girls stopped in front of him. Nobody spoke. Then Ruby stepped forward. You didn't take the money. Dean blinked. He looked at Sloan. Sloan sighed. They hear everything. Dean laughed despite himself. Then he reached into his pocket. And pulled something out. 3 small wooden medallions. Handmade. Each carved from cherry wood. Each bearing a compass. But unlike the tattoo, these compasses weren't broken. The missing star had been restored. Whole. Complete. Dean held them out. His voice shook. I make things. I fix things. I can't fix the years I missed. But I'm here now. Silence. Long silence. Then Piper reached forward. Carefully. She took one. Ran her thumb across the carved star. And smiled. It smells like campfire. Dean felt tears burn behind his eyes. Then Toby jumped in. Completely destroying the emotional moment. My dad smells like wood glue. The girls laughed. For the first time. Actually laughed. Then Toby pointed toward a pond. You guys wanna see a giant frog? Without waiting for an answer. He took off running. The triplets followed. And just like that. The ice broke. Dean and Sloan watched from a distance. 4 children standing by the water. Laughing. Talking. Discovering each other. For the first time. A tear slid down Sloan's cheek. She quickly wiped it away. Embarrassed. Dean noticed. But didn't mention it. Instead he looked at her. They're beautiful. Sloan smiled faintly. They're difficult. Dean laughed. They're yours. For a moment neither spoke. The future was still uncertain. There would be lawyers. Custody agreements. Arguments. Complications. 1,000 difficult conversations. But none of that mattered right now. Because something impossible had happened. A broken compass had finally pointed home. And 4 children who should have been strangers had become family. Not because of money. Not because of power. Not because of circumstance. Because someone chose not to walk away. And sometimes, that's what being a parent really means. Showing up. Even when it's hard. Even when you're scared. Even when the odds are stacked against you. Because love isn't measured in trust funds. It's measured in presence. And on that Sunday morning, a carpenter with sawdust on his boots taught a billionaire something she had forgotten. Some things in life cannot be bought. They can only be earned. One moment. One choice. One act of love at a time. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more emotional stories that stay with you long after the screen goes dark. And tell us in the comments. What would you have done? Taken the $2 million? Or fought for the chance to know your children? We'll see you in the next story.